Who would want to work for a global car maker these days? The auto industry has long been one of the world's most competitive, some might say cutthroat, industries. Every year, car companies churn out millions of sophisticated machines to very high technical standards into a market defined by exacting customers and chronic overcapacity. They generally have slim profit margins and extremely demanding investors. On top of that, car makers are now grappling with the transition to electric vehicles, a fundamentally different technology that is challenging all aspects of the industry. They are facing intense competition from Chinese groups like BYD, not just in the People's Republic, the world's largest car market, but also around the world. And if all that was not enough, they must now also navigate around Donald Trump's tariffs, which is scrambling their complex cross-border supply chains as the president tries to bring manufacturing back to the US. It's enough to make even the most hard-nosed executive beat his head against the steering wheel. But what does all this look like from the boardroom of a big car maker? That's what we're going to explore on The Big View this week. It's what we do at Reuters Breaking Views. We tap our best sources around the world for fresh insights into the biggest stories on global business, finance and economics. I'm your host, Peter Thalassen. Our guest this week is Jérémy Papan. Jérémy is the Chief Financial Officer of Nissan Motor, the Japanese car maker. He's worked for Nissan and its French partner Renault since 2009, spending much of that time in the United States. Before that, he was an equity research analyst, so he knows his way around a spreadsheet. Before we hear from Jérémy, I'd like to welcome Katrina Hamlin, Breaking View's resident guru on the Asian auto industry. Katrina, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, Katrina, you've been covering Japanese and Chinese car companies intensely for the past few years. I think it's fair to say there's been quite a lot going on.
Mm-hmm. It feels like the news flow never slows down. And as you hinted at there, the two biggest themes right now are the US tariffs and the rise of car companies from China. But Japanese companies like Nissan are right in the thick of it because their largest market is the US and their second largest market is China. So they're really in a difficult spot right now.
So we'll hear more about the tariffs in a bit. But just tell me, why did you think Jérémy would be a good person to give us a sort of insider's perspective on the industry?
Well, two reasons. Firstly, as I just mentioned, Nissan is really at the center of the storm. But also, they have been going through this internal crisis, which really started with that ouster of former chair Carlos Ghosn, and it's been continuing right through to this year when there was a change of leadership that saw Jérémy step into the CFO's office.
Carlos Ghosn, the executive who escaped Japan and charges in Japan, sort of hidden in a box, I seem to remember.
Yes, that's right. So I think Nissan is in a very kind of special position within this crisis. It's perhaps, even more sensitive to what's been going on than some of its peers. And so I think Jérémy is in a really good position to tell us how to survive this kind of this era of perpetual crises. And, when I spoke to him, but before we started the recording, I realized that he's also, not only very much living in the present and dealing with all of that, but at the same time having to look ahead and anticipate what's coming next. Because, as he's learned, things are changing very rapidly for his industry. So he's also thinking very, very hard about what sort of technologies and strategies they're going to need down the line, which we will talk about too.
Great. Thanks so much, Katrina. Let's hear what Jérémy had to say.
Jérémy Papan, welcome to The Big View.
Thank you, Katrina. Nice to be here.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. So, first COVID, then Chinese EVs, now tariffs. This is a really difficult time to be a global automaker. And I would really like to know, what have you and your rivals learned from dealing with these back-to-back crises?
I think it's both a tough time and a very exciting time because In fact, so much is happening that we are reinventing the industry. And I think that's the most important element of what's going on today is the fact that we have a unique opportunity as executives to be rethinking an old industry that has been around for a very long time, but is still so important to the lives of so many people. And as we provide individual mobility and we go through significant innovation and technology changes, as well as obviously managing, as you mentioned, supply chain and other considerations. So I'm actually thrilled to be an auto executive in a difficult environment where many things change, because we just need to focus on what we can control and learn and make sure that we improve on the processes that have been long established.
I'd like to dig into that a little bit more. You referenced your supply chains, the size of the industry, and the fact that things are changing so quickly. You have to plan far, far ahead when we're talking about a company and an industry of this size. How do you do that when things are so volatile?
Yeah, optionality is key. Having access to the information is key. Obviously, with COVID and then semiconductors, the whole industry discovered that we didn't have the best knowledge of our supply chain deep into the details of what's happening several levels away from an auto OEM and assembler as we are. But we just set up the right information flows, cooperation with the supply base, cooperation with the dealers. That's the name of the game. And so that's the main learning is you need to understand where it's very interdependent, and sharing and transparency and long-term commitments to the business success of the partners is the key to learning and improving.
Okay. Now, on one of these specific challenges, as we sit here today, the US tariffs on Japanese imports are kicking in. And I'm very interested to understand, what are the different sort of schools of thought, both at Nissan and among the contemporaries that you speak with when it comes to managing that specific challenge?
Yeah, the tariffs are a challenge. They were, I would say, unexpected, and they challenge a lot of the business flows that have been set up and were intended to offering the best product at the best cost to the customer. But again, we need to adjust. At Nissan, we've been very focused on what is it that we can control, and what we can control is making sure that we sell as many cars as we are producing in the US, to make sure that those are tariff-free products that we are offering to our customers, as well as taking advantage of the flexibility in our supply chain and our production plants. We had some products that were being built both in the US and in Japan, so we were able to make decisions fast, again with cost competitiveness in mind, and the fact that that's being impacted by setting up tariff. For the long term, what the company needs, what the industry needs, is a set of rules that are clear and established for, again, several years, because as you said, this is a long lead time industry, and it's uneasy to change very fast. And so that's what we're all looking for now, is what are the rules and the framework in which we can work for the 5 to 7 next years.
And another piece of the puzzle that is still quite uncertain is what ultimately happens with the US, Mexico, Canada agreements. So how do you sort of think about that if we are in a scenario where it's uneconomic for you to use your factories in North America outside of the US in the longer term? How does a company plan for that?
So, as you said, first and foremost, we've got two very solid industrial sites in the U.S. One in Tennessee, one in Mississippi, and the intent is to grow the production volume there and to grow the production of U.S. models for the U.S. customer. With USMCA, again, we want clarity. We expect the countries to come to an agreement. We have products that are fully compliant with the current USMCA setup, and which allow for a certain level of US content in products that are produced in Mexico for the US, for example. So we were fully compliant. We've done all the work to be in such a position, and our expectation is that when we are compliant with those rules, we continue to be able to be competitive in the marketplace, and again for the U.S. customer, and that will be the future of our Mexico to USA business.
Let's turn to your second largest market, China. Chinese car makers have been trying and failing to compete with Nissan and others for a number of years, but we're now at a point where they're kind of eating the international car makers' lunch in some ways. And I would like to know, from your point of view, how did we get here?
Yeah, I think it's a wake-up call for the industry, Katrina, and all of us need to adjust. In just a few years, they've proven that speed, development, innovation, bringing it to the market, using a very efficient supply chain and network of suppliers and other technology partners have allowed them to bring to the Chinese customer, obviously, a very competitive vehicle. Nissan today has two focus when looking at China. One is to stabilize and grow our sales in China again. And we're very encouraged by the success that our new sedan EV N7 has been meeting in China since we launched it in April. 26,000 orders, significantly above our expectation. And this was a product designed in just 2 years in China for China. And so we're happy to see that it is both competitive and super attractive to the customer. The second ambition of Nissan in China, beyond growing back the sales there and launching further new models, is to actually use our China assets as a core element of the future growth and success of the company. We need to make our Chinese operations that we have set up over 20 years ago work for global. There are many, many markets in the world that are very keen on enjoying China-built products. And most of the Nissans that we are now launching in China, all new energy vehicles, EVs, PHEVs, sedans today, SUVs, and pickup trucks tomorrow, will have a future under the Nissan brand outside of China as well.
Okay, you've anticipated a couple of other things I wanted to ask you about. I was going to ask you, can global car makers be successful and competitive in China now in the longer term, or is this, sort of the new status quo? And you're clearly saying that Nissan can be, but more broadly, do you think international car makers are going to be able to compete, or would you expect to see more exits?
I think we have we all have to learn from each other, and I believe just as I mentioned, the fact that being successful in China means you are successful at a number of new skills that need to come into the auto industry: speed and adapting to fast changing customer needs and customer demand. That is something that is a challenge that I would say all incumbents need to get comfortable with. And at the same time, as I mentioned, ability to use the export base and the China assets for export. When you have some of those China assets, those are important success factors for the future. So I do believe it's possible, because we have to learn from China, just as China has to learn from what has made global consumer brands successful in the auto sector over the past several years.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about using that export base. Obviously, you're not the only one who's had that idea. There is a lot of capacity in China, far more than car makers can use for that particular market, and many car makers are sending their China-built cars elsewhere. But tariffs are going up in some of the largest, most important destinations, right? So Russia, for example, used to be the biggest market for China exports. They have sort of quasi tariffs now. We've just heard that Mexico is going to increase their tariffs to 50%. So, what are the markets that you have in mind for those cars, and how do you sort of think about the fragmentation of the export market for China-built vehicles?
Yeah, fair questions, fair points. No one said it would be easy, but again, it's there for grabs because the consumer demand in those emerging markets is growing. You have a lot of first-time buyers of an automobile and a vehicle that want a very modern and cost-competitive vehicle, and that's what we have to offer. That can come from China. I'm thinking about Middle East, Southeast Asia, Latin America, for sure are the I would say easiest markets to try and develop from an export base, and then we will be looking at can we do anything else? You know, tariffs and other things. There's enough market and demand for us to avoid. I would say geopolitic nightmare of exporting in the wrong area, and I don't, that is why again we have solid plans, and it's a pillar of the Nissan turnaround and re-Nissan that we're executing on now.
Also on this exports theme, it must be really interesting for a Japanese company to see the Chinese automakers going through this phase in their globalization. And I wondered, what do you think they've learned from watching Japanese companies go through that themselves over the last few decades?
I'm sure they looked because they learn fast, and I think what history has taught us is the importance of quality, the importance of customer after sales, of servicing, of availability of spare parts, the buildup of a trusted brand for a relationship with the customer that goes over a life cycle rather than a transactional every time changing. And so the buildup of those brand attributes by the Japanese auto industry, Nissan in particular, I think those are lessons that the Chinese brands can be looking at. Trying to copy or improve, just like we need to adapt to China's speed and new forms of partnerships between suppliers, tech companies, and OEMs when looking at how fast China brings innovation into their market.
I'd love to know, what do you think their greatest sort of weaknesses are now as they go out into the world?
I think jury is out to see whether global brands can emerge. And again, what matters is customer satisfaction beyond the initial sale and servicing the vehicles that have been sold to the customer base. And so here we think, we have an advantage. We have 38 million Nissans on the road, and a very strong satisfaction for those drivers. And so, bringing our cost competitive and innovative products to that customer base is absolutely key for the future of the company.
And they're facing a much tougher environment as well in some ways, aren't they?
I think the tougher environment makes them a tougher competitor. So again, we recognize what they bring. We're humble of the changes they brought to the market and the fact we have to adjust fast. And I'm sure they're looking at what to do to succeed in the future as well.
And then going back to China itself, there's a lot that could change there in the next few years, given the capacity, the export situation, and everything else we've spoken about. How do you see that situation evolving in the next few years? Are you expecting bankruptcies, exits, forced marriages? What do you see coming?
Well, in China, there are a lot of brands, and there are a lot of product offerings. The logic would be to have cooperation or consolidation around strong players, just as it happened globally over time for the global auto industry. And so that may very well be one of the phenomenons we will be seeing in the next few years. But there's also again a role for China for the incumbents and for companies like Nissan who have a strong base and without participating into a consolidation over there can truly deliver to their global business the core strength of the China business.
If I put you on the spot and asked you how many companies you thought might be in China 10 years hence, what would your best guess be? I think we have about 150 today.
I wouldn't want to guess, but if there are 150 today, that's a lot of companies for a market that is the largest. But you need economies of scale, and the competitiveness is going to be key through that, through achieving that scale.
Let's bring the conversation back to Nissan. On top of everything that we've just discussed, since you joined in 2018, Nissan has had to grapple with the future of its alliance with Renault, the ouster of Carlos Ghosn, and yet another leadership change earlier this year, which saw Ivan Espinosa become CEO. And of course, you stepped into the role of CFO. I was wondering, what made you stick with the company through all of that?
Look, I have a passion for the company and for the brand, for the products, and I'm absolutely resolute to put Nissan back on strong tracks. Much of it is really under our control, and so with Ivan, I mean, we're completely focused on what it is that we can change fast to reestablish Nissan strength the way they were in the past. It's a 90 years old, more than 90 years old company that has another 90 good years ahead of it. And so that's the focus here. So I really never thought about quitting. That's not my style. I like a challenge, and I like to fix and to improve. And I think a lot of the changes to come will be linked to our ability to want to question how things have been done in the past in order to reestablish the right processes, the right speed, the right level of decision in the company. There's so much of a cultural change that we can lead, and that's fascinating.
And speaking of all those changes, so you're right at the center of a lot of the changes, obviously, especially with regards to the financial aspects. And I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about how you walk that very fine line between cutting just enough and not cutting so much that you are endangering the product and ultimately the progress of the turnaround itself. How do you kind of walk that line?
Yeah, it's a fair question. It isn't something that frightens us or that we think as if we were managing a risk here, that the risk that you described. Frankly, managing the overcapacity is something that needs to be done. Reducing the capacity doesn't mean you're going to be less ambitious or you're going to hit the growth capability of the company. What it indicates is you're just going to be able to have a more sustainable, profitable business, reassessing the actual levels of sales that you're having today, rather than dreaming of sales that were not achieved in the past. So that side of the cost exercise is not endangering our growth capability in any way. We have not stopped the launch of any new project, of any new technology into the market for 25, 26. You will see a significant number of new models coming out in Japan, in Europe. We will be bringing hybrids to the USA as a Nissan e-Power. So there's a lot that is going through. None of this is intended to limit the growth capability of the company. Quite the opposite, is actually to make the growth of the company really a good one and a sustainable one. On cost cutting, variable cost cutting, you could imagine that it's a commercial battle between Nissan and its supply base. No, it's about opening up and rethinking, how do we produce and assemble a vehicle? How do we define the standards? How do we work with the ideas that the suppliers bring to us in order to create better economies of scale for them? And so that's really the key driver here of the effort. It's collaboration with the supply base to be cost competitive. It's readjusting the structure of the company to the size of the business today. So I think we're doing what it takes to grow again in a safe and sustainable way.
And you said that you're going into this without fear, but if I was one of your suppliers, I would perhaps be a little bit fearful. How do you see the situation evolving for your suppliers? How are they walking this line as well?
I think the suppliers, what they want from us is early collaboration, transparency on what we're trying to achieve, trust and confidence in the volume that we will be talking about, and really working with them in terms of generating for them the economies of scale and the good business that they can have with Nissan. And this is what is being done today. And the cost reduction effort is not led by purchasing as a commercial discussion. It's led by thousands of engineers that are listening to what we should do in order to regain the cost competitiveness that we need to regain. And so I think the suppliers that are involved in this conversation with us, they actually understand and support the transformation that is underway.
And as you've just sort of highlighted there, the conversation and the sort of collaboration here, it's much bigger than Nissan itself. How are you thinking at the moment about the possibility of new partnerships, and if it was possible to find a new partner or a potential new deal along the lines of the one that was discussed earlier with Honda, how much more time could that win you to get this turnaround right?
I think reestablishing the cost structure of the business to be realigned with the reality of the sales today, that is one exercise that we need to do independently of partnership and cooperation. Partnership and cooperation, be it with another OEM or with our supply base, that is a key skill and a necessity given what we described earlier about the challenge in evolution and the fast changing evolution of the auto industry, and the fact that there's decoupling in how customers are acknowledging and interested in vehicle technology at the moment between so many different markets. So I think consolidation partnership is clearly part of the Nissan way forward, both uh, how close we get to some suppliers, as well as how much cooperation can be done with key partners. We've got long established relationships with Renault and Mitsubishi. There's probably more that can be done within those partnerships, just as we are exploring and having conversations with Honda around key topics for the industry. Software-defined vehicles being one of the most important, that represents a fair amount of investment and needs economies of scale quite fast. And so those are areas where clearly there will be decisions to be made.
So I wonder if there's scope to involve new kinds of partners like tech partners or perhaps even private equity.
Private equity, I'm not sure, because Nissan has liquidity, and we're not, looking for these types of contribution. I would say technology partners. I think you're very right that uh, the ability to cooperate with a supplier, with another OEM, with a technology partner, that is absolutely key in the future. And so we're having those talks and discussion. Obviously, we're not the only OEM, but we're having those talks and discussion to try and find the sweet spot around projects to do together.
And what sort of technology do you think is going to be the most important for the Nissan or the car of the future?
I think the car of the future has, will have uh, two aspects to build on, which all come down to the software capabilities of the vehicle, which is its autonomous capability. And once that is established and safe, then what do you do in terms of life on board, life in the car, if you don't need to drive the vehicle as much? And so that, with the evolution of the powertrain towards electrification, those are really the three future technology pillars of the industry. And so being strong in the market and being ready for those new frontiers of autonomous and connected is absolutely what will be making us win in the future.
And since we're talking about the future, as we get towards the back end of the year, Breaking Views likes to think about predictions for the year ahead. I wondered if I could put you on the spot and ask you for a couple of predictions for the global auto industry in 2026.
So I would say the auto industry is going to welcome clarification and stability in the rules. And so normally everyone's working very hard to have that coming our way. I think we will be seeing announcements around cooperation across the industry. And Nissan truly expects to be part of that. And it will be a continuous flow of adjusting to the changing customer demands, whether it's for a certain type of electrification or a certain type of connected technology. On the Nissan side, you will see a lot of new products. Japan showrooms will be significantly different at Nissan in 12 months' time than they are today. In Europe, it will be just the same. In the US, we will have an all-new e-power technology that we will be bringing to the US, and so the combination of that, I think, will make next year a solid year of comeback for Nissan.
Great. Well, Jeremy, I know you have a lot to do, so I'm going to let you go now. Thank you so much for joining us. Such a pleasure.
Thank you, Katharina.
That's our show this week. Thanks to Jeremy and Katrina for those great insights into the car industry. And as always, thank you for listening. This podcast was produced by Oliver Taslich in London. You can listen to a new episode of The Big View every Tuesday. Don't forget to tune into our sister podcast, Viewsroom, every Thursday, as well as the other great podcasts from the Reuters team. Please let us know what you thought. And for more in-depth conversations, follow The Big View. Meanwhile, check out our views on the biggest stories in business and finance every day at breakingviews.com and reuters.com.